Hello, you're looking at H20Map SWM, Innovyze product that connects the SWM 5 engine to the database folders developed by Innovyze in a map info environment. So we're going to do a video tour of all the different menus in H20Map SWM. I'm Bob Dickinson, and we're going to start with File. File, New, Open, Close, all pretty self-explanatory. What's kind of cool about this product is you can import InfoSWM. You can import H20Map Sewer. You can export the map to a bitmap, meta file, EMF file, or save it to a file. You can export layer data, do print preview rather, and print. Create, these are how you add individual features like rain gauges all the way down to subcatchments. And then you can digitize a network, which basically allows you to do a continuous series of adding nodes, links, and weirs, orifices, or pumps. Edit is how you move the attributes around. You can edit the text, you can edit the subcatchment vertices, move the subcatchment. You can group edit on the domain or on the selection. So let me select a few elements, click enter, and now we can edit all of those features, all of these features from that selection. So that's a kind of a really nice way to do editing. Okay, also we have database tables, and here's where you have your data. So here's your junction data. Junction data, your divider, which only works in kinematic wave, outfalls, storages, subcatchments, conduits, pumps, etc. And we have a lot of flexibility about how to import that data. So it's either the whole table, a domain, user selection, database query, selection set, element ID, etc. Element junction information is in this table. Geometry data is in this table. This is where you enter things like node inflow, inlets, which are the H20 drive with the flow, RDII, etc. Hydrologic data is for LID controls, rain gauges, RDII, snowpack, soil, and infiltration. Soil basically is a table that has the soil data for the various types of infiltration, Horton, green amp, and curve number. And what you do is when you set it up for infiltration, you say how much of that soil is covered for each subcatchment, and the program will automatically figure out what the composite number is for that. There's also real-time control data, simulation settings, etc. So database tables are really the key to H20Map SWM. It's in the HSDB folder, and every time you make a change to that, it edits or changes that data. View is things like, well, let's continue down here, delete domain. There's a limited delete, recall, or undo, which basically allows you to go step by step to undelete things. View is for adding layers, for example, different shape files or CSV files. These are basically the map info GIS capabilities. ID labeling will label the nodes and the links and the subcatchments. Snap is basically data organization features for putting things on the system. Toolbars, there's 6 main toolbars: edit, zoom, domain, facility, active output, and standard, and those are at the top here. You can also do name views, refresh map, do a map display. If you click on map display, you can decide what kind of active output or database features you want to apply to your model. So for example, if I come over here to map display and say for the subcatchments I want to change basically the color based on the area, apply that, and now I have a colored map display for that. Exchange is also a very key element. Here you can import or export CSV files. You can import things like Excel files into all of the various database tables. So this is our connection between the GIS, Excel, DBF files to the databases. Also, you can import and export EPA SWM. So let's go here, and we'll just call that a test here. Save that, and now we export it to SWM5. And then you can also then import that. You can also import HEC-RAS data. You can generate a GEN file, and then Convert Polyline will take a DWG or DXF file and bring that into the model. So all this is basically shown in the help files, so you can review what's going on there. Okay, scenarios, a key element is our scenarios. So here we're going to make a new child. When you have a child scenario, you can have different data sets. So for example, if we wanted to have a different future junction data set, we would make a new file, and we'll call that basically a clone. So now we have a new junction set that goes with this child scenario. If you also have scenarios, you have a data set manager, which allows you to basically actively edit the scenarios together, scenario data sets together. And then you can edit the actual scenario, compare data scenarios, which is a handy way of seeing what the differences are. Again, all that is described in the help file. Under Tools, you have Run Manager. Run Manager is the features about the model. So here you have the choices of what type of infiltration to use, routing model, whether to use ponding, what kind of time step, what are your dynamic wave or Saint-Venant solution options there are, whether you're saving hotstar files or other files, what kind of water quality you're using, and under Advanced, what kind of multi-core. So if you want to restrict your model to just 4 cores, you can use that. So that's a little bit about the dynamic wave solution there. You can do batch simulation. You can change the output. So for example, you can run the model in CFS and graph it in gallons per minute or MGD. Report Manager allows you to graph the graphs. First thing you have to do though is run it. So let's run this for a second. Okay, so now we ran that model. Now when we go to Report Manager, and we want to look at a conduit graph, click on the conduit graph. Now we have our conduit graph. You can see the subcatchment rainfall at the top and the flow in that conduit. Alright, so going on down, we have Animation Editor, Viewer, Customized Reports. You can make customized reports, query reports. Another key aspect of all Innovyze software is the ability to do queries and do query summations. Output Statistics Manager allows you to make statistical reports for all of the different elements in the model and figure out how many storm events there are. So it's really a model that's keyed up or keyed for continuous simulation. Invert Elevation tool, you can calculate the node inverts, conduit inverts, do elevation interpolation. You can also manage the domain. So for example, if I wanted to add to my domain here, I'll click here, and now I've had these features added to the domain. And the idea behind the domain is you come over here to Database Editor. Now I can just look at the data for the domain. So if I just wanted to look at the junction data in my domain, click here, and I have no junctions here. But let's look at subcatchments. So come over here to Database Editor, look at the subcatchments, domain, and I have 2 subcatchments in my domain. Facility is a really cool thing. That facility allows you to basically make active elements or inactive elements. So say I decided I really didn't want to have this subcatchment in my model. I could turn that off. Now it's grayed out. So now it's still visible on the screen, but it's not used in the model. So when I solve it, it's not going to generate any flow from this. Also under Tools, we have calibration data. You can have calibration data. Similar to the format of SWM5, you can have combined routing files, create profiles, add-on manager. Add-on manager things like SWM Live, Drive Weather Flow Allocator, Designer, which are genetic algorithm, and Calibrator, another genetic algorithm. Preferences are really a key, and that's where you decide things like what kind of scale, colors you're using, what type of operations you're using, whether you're using absolute conduit inverts, absolute junction, whether you're using vertical roughness, etc. And also, this is where you decide what kind of label you're putting into the program. Okay, there's also other little tools. For example, a calibrator. Create dual drainage, which will make an overland flow conduit for you based on that, and other tools here for fitting in. Utilities, locate, change ID, which will allow you to alter the names of many links at one time. I tend to do this in Excel and then copy and paste to the change ID feature. Connectivity is where you can do things like display the connectivity, show connected links, fix various things like pipes going in the wrong direction. Network review fix is for tracing upstream or downstream. So let's, for example, trace the upstream network. It's now in red, or it's in a domain, so now we have a domain of the upstream network. Also under this we have locate parallel pipes, trace downstream, etc. So it was basically for finding various aspects of your model. Database, clean, pack, reindex, in case you have any kind of basically what Reindex does is it sort of takes all of the blank areas in the model or in the model IDs and compresses them together. Recall, as I mentioned, we have a limited recall, but you could find out what nodes and links are there. Update database from map is really key. So, for example, why would you use this? This is if you wanted to move nodes around or links around, then you would update the database from map and figure out what the new conduit lengths are, what the new XYs are, and also what the new areas of the subcatchments are. Same thing for this, update map from database. This is where if you bring in a GIS data and the GIS is not quite on the map, you update the map from database, force all network, and it will make the map that you see on the screen be in sync with the database. Clear message board just gets rid of the message board down here. Then under window you have attribute browser, turn that off, turn that back on. Message board, turn that on, turn it off. Help is very key. This tells you about the model, things like your license, your projects, etc. The content is the help file. And technical support will send an email to us or go to the support homepage. And Innovyze on the web will show you the latest update. The current update for H20Map SWM is version 13. So here's a little bit about H20Map SWM attribute browser. Over here, it basically connects the various features of the map to the database. You have operation where you basically have shapes. For example, here's the cunette shape that we just mentioned, and other things like selection sets, query sets, etc. So we'll talk more about that later, but this is a general introduction to the features in H20Map SWM.